Welcome, everyone. Get ready, because today we are going deep into the unbelievable life of Louis Zamperini.
Unbelievable is right.
We've got excerpts from Laura Hillenbrand's biography, Unbroken.
Oh, yeah.
And this man's story is just extraordinary.
It is really something.
From just being a mischievous kid to his Olympic running career and then ending up a prisoner of war in World War II. It's a wild ride.
I mean, it's just amazing how Hillenbrand, she shows those little hints of just how resilient Louis was, even when he was just a kid getting into trouble.
Right.
Makes you wonder if those crazy experiences were almost like, getting him ready for all the tough stuff he would have to face later.
It's like foreshadowing.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. Louis grew up in Torrance, California.
Mm-hmm.
And by the sounds of it, he was a huge troublemaker.
He was always on an adventure, even as, a little toddler.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Hillenbrand mentions this story about him jumping off a moving train.
Wait, what? As a toddler?
Yeah, and he was totally fine when the train, left without him.
That's so crazy.
It really is.
That's not just adventurous. That's I don't know, almost like a sign of the incredible things he would end up going through.
Yeah, it's wild.
But how did his parents deal with this little daredevil? I can't even imagine.
Well, his mom, she definitely had her hands full. Can you imagine bribing his classmates with homemade pie just to figure out where he was and what he was up to?
That's hilarious. It's like a spy operation.
Oh, right.
That's not parenting, that's espionage.
Totally.
And then there's that story about him chasing his sister around with a pet snake to get her out of hiding.
That's next level sibling rivalry.
Oh, yeah. So not your typical childhood,
Yeah.
but eventually all that wild energy found a positive outlet.
Right. Running.
Yeah, it became his way to focus all that restlessness into something good.
Exactly.
It's pretty incredible how he goes from this rebellious kid to this amazing record-breaking runner.
Yeah.
What changed?
Well, his brother Pete was super important. Yeah, he was Louis' coach and his biggest fan. He just believed in Louis' talent and pushed him to be his best. It's such a great story about, brotherhood and believing in someone.
And Louis definitely lived up to that belief. He shattered the national high school mile record in 1934.
Which is a huge deal.
Yeah, that's not just a small accomplishment.
No, not at all. And it was just the start. He went on to win so many wristwatches as track awards that he started giving them away.
Wow.
It's like all those wins were just stepping stones to something bigger, like the 1936 Berlin Olympics.
Now, those were some seriously historic games.
Mhm.
I mean, Jesse Owens defying Hitler and just crushing Nazi ideology by winning 4 gold medals.
Oh, absolutely. And then there's Louis Zamperini competing on this world stage, almost breaking the world record in the 5,000-meter race.
It's incredible to think that they were both there at this pivotal moment in history.
I know, it's amazing.
But we can't forget about Louis' legendary audacity. He stole a Nazi flag from the Reich Chancellery.
Right from under Hitler's nose.
It's hard to believe.
It's crazy. He snuck past guards, grabbed the flag as a souvenir, and managed to get away with it.
Amazing.
You have to wonder if that rebellious side of him, the one that could have gotten him into so much trouble, it actually helped him develop these amazing survival instincts.
All that mischief was just part of who he was.
Yeah, woven into him. But the world was on the edge of war.
Yeah.
And soon, Louis' life would change forever.
From the Olympics to the front lines of World War II.
A whole new kind of challenge. So Louis went from the excitement of the Olympics right into the Army Air Corps.
Wow, what a change.
And before long, he's training as a bombardier on the B-24 Liberator.
I've heard some things about that plane.
Yeah.
It wasn't exactly known for being super reliable, right?
Yeah, not really. The B-24, they actually called it the flying coffin.
Oh, wow.
It was really tough to fly, and it was known for being easily damaged, especially in combat.
That's scary.
Imagine being stuck inside this metal thing, knowing that the chances of things going wrong were pretty high.
I wouldn't want to be in that situation.
Nobody would.
It's kind of crazy to think that Louis almost didn't get drafted.
Oh, yeah. How did that happen?
Well, Hillenbrand mentions how he, intentionally tried to fail his Army physical.
Really?
Yeah, he ate a ton of candy bars thinking it would mess up his blood sugar.
That's so Louis, always trying to find a way out.
Classic Louis.
So resourceful. But, it seems like fate had other plans.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So his first real combat experience was this crazy Christmas Eve raid on Wake Island.
I know, it's kind of strange to think about celebrating peace and then also fighting a war at the same time.
Yeah, a bit of a contradiction.
Hillenbrand describes the raid so vividly. Bombs going off, bullets flying everywhere, and it's all happening on Christmas Eve.
Wow.
Louis and his crew, they managed to bomb some Japanese installations, but their plane, the Superman, it got hit pretty bad.
So they barely made it back.
Yeah, it was a really close call. A big reminder of the danger they were in all the time.
It's easy to get caught up in the action of a mission, but the reality of war is a lot harsher.
Oh, definitely. They weren't just fighting the enemy. They were fighting against the weather mechanical problems and just plain bad luck.
A lot of things working against them.
Absolutely. Hillenbrand points out that there were a lot of deaths in the Pacific Theater that weren't even from battles.
Oh, really?
Yeah, accidents, planes going missing, things like that.
So the dangers weren't just from enemy attacks. The Pacific Ocean itself was a huge risk.
Exactly. And then there's the crash that changed everything. Louis's plane, the Green Hornet, went down in the middle of the Pacific.
That must have been terrifying.
It wasn't just a crash, it was the start of this crazy fight for survival. Imagine being stranded on this tiny raft out in the open ocean, sun beating down on you, sharks circling around you.
This is like a nightmare.
It was, and they had very little food and water, no land in sight. Just absolutely brutal conditions.
How did Louis and his crew even begin to cope with a situation like that?
Well, Hillenbrand talks about how they all reacted differently. Louis, he was always optimistic. So he kept these detailed logs of their time on the raft. He was focused on staying alive and never gave up hope.
That's amazing.
Phil, the pilot, he found comfort in his faith. It gave him strength. But the tail gunner, Mac, he just couldn't hold on.
It's understandable in that situation.
Yeah. The isolation, lack of food and water, the feeling that there were no way out, it all became too much. He died at sea.
That's so sad.
It was a huge blow to Louis and Phil, a constant reminder of how much war can cost. Phil and Bran really captures just how much being lost at sea affected them mentally and physically.
Yeah, I can only imagine. The constant sun, the hunger, the thirst, the fear of sharks or another storm, it must have been unbearable.
It was. But then instead of being rescued, they were captured by the Japanese.
And
And then sent to this really brutal POW camp. It was a dark turn in their story.
to understand what Louis went through in the camp, we kind of have to look at how the Japanese viewed war and prisoners.
Right. Surrendering in their culture was seen as a huge disgrace, and that really shaped how they treated prisoners.
It was like these two totally different cultures clashing, and the results were devastating.
Yeah. Hillenbrand describes the conditions in those camps. Starvation, disease, forced labor, constant abuse, both physical and mental.
It's hard to even imagine.
And then there was this guard, Mutsuhiro, the bird, Watanabe.
I've heard about him. He sounds awful.
He was. He was sadistic. He enjoyed making the prisoners suffer. He became the symbol of how they were being dehumanized.
It's just horrifying.
But even in those conditions, Louis found ways to fight back.
Really?
Remember how resourceful he always was? That same mischievousness that used to get him in trouble helped him survive. He would find scraps of food and share them with others. He was always looking for ways to outsmart the guards.
That's incredible.
There's this powerful story about how he and some other prisoners, they used a dropped pan to signal to other POWs that Saipan had fallen.
So even as prisoners, they never lost hope of being freed.
Exactly. That story shows just how resilient the human spirit can be. Even in the face of such brutality, they found ways to communicate, to keep hope alive, to resist the dehumanization they were facing. It's truly remarkable.
It's hard to imagine what it must have been like after all those years of suffering when Louis and the other POWs were finally liberated.
Yeah.
The war ended with the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Japan surrendered. The emotions they must have felt, it's hard to comprehend.
It was such a complicated moment. The joy of freedom was definitely there.
Right.
But it was mixed with the trauma of everything they'd been through. Hillenbrand describes the chaos and the relief of being liberated, but also this lingering fear that some of the POWs had.
What do you mean?
Well, they were worried about what the Japanese might do. Like, what if they had this kill-all order to get rid of anyone who had witnessed their brutality?
That's a chilling thought. It really highlights how deeply their captivity affected them even after they were free. It seems like for Louis, even though he was home, the war wasn't really over for him.
No, it wasn't. Coming home didn't mean his struggles were over.
Yeah.
He had a whole new battle to fight this time. It was against his own inner demons. Hillenbrand talks about how he struggled with PTSD, the nightmares, the flashbacks, and he even turned to alcohol to try to numb the pain.
So even though he was safe, the trauma of the war continued to haunt him.
It did. It really shows you how deep those invisible wounds can be.
It's a reminder that recovering from something like that takes time.
Exactly. And for Louis, that journey took a really unexpected turn when he went to a Billy Graham sermon.
Really.
Yeah, it was this huge turning point for him, like a moment of spiritual awakening.
That's incredible. This guy goes from a rebellious kid to an Olympic athlete to a POW and then finds peace and healing through faith.
I know, it's amazing. Hillenbrand describes it as this complete transformation. Through his new faith, Louis found a way to forgive not just his captors, but himself, too. And she argues that this forgiveness was the key to finally letting go of the past.
It's a powerful example of how forgiveness can help us heal even after unimaginable pain.
Mhm.
Did Louis ever confront his captors?
He did. Years later, he actually went back to Japan.
Wow.
But he didn't go for revenge.
Right.
He went with a message of forgiveness and hope. He even visited some of the guards who had held him prisoner. It was this incredible act of grace and courage.
Louis Zamperini's life was truly extraordinary. He was an Olympic athlete, a war hero, a survivor, and in the end, a man who found redemption. It's an incredible legacy.
His story really reminds us of the power of the human spirit, the ability to hold on to hope even in the darkest of times, and the way that forgiveness can change everything. Zamperini's journey from a mischievous kid to a man who embraced forgiveness, it's a lesson for all of us.
It really makes you think what stands out to you as the most remarkable part of his story.
That's a good question.
Is it his athletic achievements, his ability to survive the war, or this incredible capacity for forgiveness?
It's really hard to choose just one.
It's definitely something to ponder as you reflect on this amazing life. And if you're looking to really delve into it, I highly recommend checking out Hillenbrand's full biography.
I second that. It's a must read.
It's a powerful testament to the strength of the human spirit and a story you won't forget. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.